Hello everyone, this is Lam here. In today's Adobe Wednesday, I want to talk about time lapses. I want to show you a quick and efficient way to create a time lapse. We're not trying to create the best time lapse possible. Instead, I want to show you an efficient way to do it so we can concentrate on video. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So for anyone who's never done a time lapse, here's an example with a Fuji camera. What you want to do is you want to set up your Fuji camera most likely on a tripod. You want to hit the menu system, and what you're looking for is the interval timer. Most cameras will have this built in, but there are certain cameras like from Canon and Sony that do not. You're probably going to need accessory in order to use that system if you're going to go with one of those brands. So go ahead and select interval timer. It's going to ask you how much time you want to wait in between pictures. Generally speaking, I wait somewhere between 2 to 5 seconds. You really don't want to go any longer than that unless you want to do an all-day time lapse, which you can set up to like 30 seconds or a minute. But just keep in mind, it takes a long time to do one of those time lapses. I generally select about 800 photos, and that would be long enough for, like, I would say a 30-second time lapse, and I will crop it down to more like 10 seconds. And then from there, it'll ask you how long you want to wait. Usually you just want to start it immediately. You select that and the camera will start taking pictures for you. So as you can see right here, I have 4 time lapses ready to go. All of these folders have images for me to build my time lapse. This particular one is me building gates for the New Albany Drone Festival in 2018. I'm going to go ahead and use this one as an example of how to build a time lapse. So I'm going to go ahead, open up Adobe Premiere Pro. I have a new timeline project already set. First thing I'm going to do is not import in my time lapse. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and import in a 4K clip so I can set the settings to my timeline. This is something that I find very useful to do because a lot of the times your images are going to be much larger than 4K. So what I want to do is I want to set the scaling to 4K so that when I import my images, I can scale it correctly for when I export that time lapse. So I'm going to go ahead, go back out. I'm going to go into my vlogs, and for this one, actually not my vlogs, I'm going to go to Adobe Wednesday. I'm going to import in one of my clips. This is a clip that I've already recorded. I'm going to go ahead, bring it into my Adobe project timeline, and then I'm going to drag it into timeline. So as soon as I drag it into my timeline, I'm going to go ahead and set the timeline settings to 4K. That's what I wanted to do. The actual video really doesn't matter. This one's actually the video of me showing how to do a time lapse on a camera. So this is going to be the perfect thing to have in here. So now we're going to go ahead and import in all those images as one movie clip inside this Adobe project. So we're going to go ahead and go to File. We're going to go to Import. And then as you can see, it's already opened up to my time-lapse folder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first image in my time-lapse folder. And the most important thing to do here is to make sure that the image sequence is selected. So there's a few caveats to using image sequence. Number one, all of your images have to be in sequential order, so they have to be numbered. If there's a split in any of the numbers, what's going to happen is that Adobe Premiere Pro is going to stop at that number. So let's go ahead and hit open. And what's going to do is it's going to import in all of those images as one movie clip. As you can see, we can drag it into the timeline now, and it is one movie clip. If you go ahead and move over to the timeline, what you're going to see is that the image is really cropped in, and that's because the photos are much larger than 4K. A 4K image is under 12 megapixels, so what you're going to see is that a lot of high megapixel cameras are going to be able to produce a larger than 4K image. So what we want to do is we want to select that. We're going to go to Control Effects, and we're going to go to Scaling, and we're going to go ahead and reduce the scaling until we see the entire image. Now, most of the images are not going to be in a 4K aspect ratio, so there is going to be some cropping involved. If you can see, when I actually move all the way out, if I want the entire image, I'm going to have bars on the sides. So that's not something I typically want. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scale it so that it fits the entire image. This is the reason why we dragged a 4K clip into the timeline, because we want that aspect ratio and also to have all the other settings preset for us when we do the export. At this point, I can go ahead and remove that 4K video clip out of the timeline and just keep the time lapse in there, because what we're going to do is we're going to export that time lapse, and then we're going to keep the exported or the finished time lapse, and then I'm going to remove the images because the images are actually quite bulky. There's going to be a couple of gigabytes of still images. I really don't need that. All I really want is the finished product. If we go ahead and hit the play button, as you can see, the image starts playing. One thing that you'll notice right away is that the image is usually a little bit laggy on most computers. That's because it's trying to process all these images into one video clip. What I like to do is I like to export it as a finished copy. But before I do that, there is another thing that I generally like to do, and that is I like to add a little bit extra motion into the video clip, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and drag it to the end of the video clip. There we go, right there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this icon right here to toggle the animation. So at this point, what I'm saying is at the end clip, I want it to be at 64.4%. I'm going to go ahead and move the track. I'm going to go ahead and move the head to the beginning. And what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more so that I'm going to have some motion along with the time lapse. So I generally go from 10% to 25% zoomed in. So we're going to go ahead and play with that. It's at 64 right now. Let's go ahead and move it to, I don't know, 74 and see what it looks like. So I'm going to move it to 74, and that's going to zoom in a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and hit the play button. So that's really not enough motion for anybody to see. We're going to go ahead and select that again. And let's go ahead and select 84. And let's go ahead and try that play button again. So as you can see, there is a little bit more motion now as it zooms out. What I'm going to do next is, since it's a 23-second time lapse, I want to reduce it to about the 10-second range. So I'm going to highlight the clip. I'm going to right click on it, and under speed and duration, I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by 200%. That's going to make it an 11-second time lapse. That's within the range that I like most of my time lapses. So I'm actually making this time lapse even faster. So let's go ahead and play that. Computers are going to have to work really hard in order to actually make this time lapse play. This is why I like to export the time lapse as a finished movie. That way it doesn't have to work as hard when I'm actually editing a real video. Going to pause that real quick. Let the computer catch up. So at this point, I like the motion of the picture. I also like how quickly the time lapse is moving. I'm happy with that. This is the point where I'm actually going to go ahead and export this time lapse and then make it into a video, and then I'm going to delete all of the photos. So I'll highlight my timeline. I'll go to File, I'll go to Export, Media. So when the export settings come up, what I generally do is in the presets, I'll select YouTube 4K. Most likely this is going to be a time lapse for YouTube, so I'll just go ahead and take those presets. I'll usually use the maximum render quality just so that it's the best image that I can get, and then I'll go ahead and export it. This usually takes, I don't know, anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and you will have a finished clip in which you can use in your videos. So, as you can see, it's super simple to make a time lapse this way. If you have any questions about this, please leave it in the comments below. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.